First Contact under Fire High Admiral Zelax of the Galactic Coalition stared at the holographic display with all four of his crystalline eyes. Another system had fallen to the Void Scourge, the once mighty Iridian Empire with its phase-shifting. Technology and quantum weaponry had collapsed in mere days. "That's the 6th advanced civilization this cycle," whispered Sub-Commander Trell, her translucent skin pulsing with distress patterns. "The Scourge adapts to every weapon we deploy. They consume our defenses and turn them against us." The Coalition war room fell silent. Representatives from 27 spacefaring species shifted uncomfortably in their environment bubbles. The Void Scourge, a hive-minded collective of biomechanical entities, had emerged from deep space 6 months ago. Initially dismissed as a minor threat, they had since consumed nearly a quarter of the Coalition's territory. "The Scourge demonstrates unprecedented adaptation capabilities," reported Science Director Vexar, her tentacles undulating nervously around her data tablet. "Each engagement provides them with new biological and technological configurations. Our Class 12 civilization weaponry is being rendered obsolete at an accelerating rate." Admiral Zelax's crystalline form dimmed slightly, the equivalent of a human sigh. "We need new approaches, something the Scourge hasn't encountered." "There is one option we haven't considered," said Political Liaison Morex hesitantly. All eyes turned to the small, furry diplomat. "The Terrans have requested Coalition membership for decades. We've always denied them on grounds of their primitive development. But perhaps the Deathworlders?" interrupted war strategist Kraz, his scales flaring with derision. "They barely have interstellar capabilities. Their civilization is only Class 4 at best. Yet they survive on a planet that would kill most of us within minutes," Morex countered. "High gravity, toxic oxygen atmosphere, extreme temperature variations, dangerous wildlife, constant natural disasters, and they evolved through all of it." Admiral Zelax's crystalline structure pulsed with consideration. "Send a diplomatic envoy. If nothing else, they might serve as effective shock troops." Captain Elena Reyes stood on the observation deck of the Coalition diplomatic vessel, watching Earth shrink to a blue marble behind them. At 42, she had spent half her life in the United Earth Space Force, commanding exploration teams on Mars, Europa, and beyond. When humanity had finally achieved practical interstellar travel 15 years ago, she'd been among the first to venture to nearby star systems. And now, after decades of rejection, the mighty Galactic Coalition had finally called on Earth for help. "Captain, the Coalition representatives request your presence in the briefing room," announced Lieutenant Jameson over the comm. Elena straightened her uniform. "On my way." The briefing room hummed with alien technology far beyond human understanding. 3 Coalition representatives waited: a crystalline being, a translucent humanoid, and something resembling a 6-limbed cat. "Captain Reyes." The crystalline being's voice resonated directly in her mind, clearly Admiral Zelax. "We will arrive at Coalition headquarters in approximately 12 Earth hours. We must prepare you for presentation to the High Council." Elena nodded. "My team is ready, Admiral, though I'm curious why the Coalition suddenly finds humanity worthy of attention after rejecting our membership application 17 times. The cat-like alien, Morex, according to her briefing, twitched its whiskers. "Circumstances have changed, Captain. The Coalition faces an existential threat. Over the next hours, Elena learned about the Void Scourge, their rapid adaptations, their consumption of both organic and technological systems, their seemingly unstoppable advance. Our most advanced weapons fail within moments of deployment," explained Trell, the translucent being. "The Scourge analyzes energy signatures and develops countermeasures almost instantly." Elena frowned. "And you think humans can help? We're centuries behind your technology." "That," Admiral Zelax's crystalline form brightened, may precisely be your advantage. The Galactic Council chamber stretched nearly a kilometer in diameter, with thousands of representatives from coalition species occupying environmental bubbles arranged in concentric circles. Elena and her team of 10 human specialists stood in the center, feeling the weight of countless alien gazes. "The Council recognizes the representatives of Earth," announced Grand Counselor Vrex, a gaseous entity contained within an ornate mechanical shell. "While your species has not yet achieved the development benchmarks for coalition membership, we face unprecedented circumstances." Elena stepped forward. "The people of Earth thank the Council for this opportunity. We may lack your advanced technology, but we bring different perspectives and capabilities." A wave of dismissive murmurs rippled through the chamber. "What can Deathworlders possibly offer against a threat that has defeated our Class 12 civilizations?" called out a counselor from the inner ring. Elena smiled, a gesture that caused several nearby aliens to flinch at the sight of exposed teeth. "That's just it, Counselor. We're Deathworlders. We evolved on a planet that tried to kill us at every turn. We didn't survive by developing energy shields or gravity manipulators. We survived by adaptation, improvisation, and sheer stubborn determination." She gestured to her team. "Dr. Patel is an expert in biology and toxicology. Major Chen specializes in unconventional warfare. Engineer Rodriguez can build working technology from scraps most would consider junk." The Council remained skeptical, but desperation outweighed their reservations. Within 3 days, Elena's team was assigned to the Coalition flagship Luminous Dawn, bound for the Torali system, the next likely target of the Scourge. "They've given us a cargo bay," Major Chen observed as the humans were led to their quarters on the Luminous Dawn. "Not exactly VIP treatment." "They still think we're primitives," Elena replied, inspecting the space. "Let's use that to our advantage." The humans transformed their assigned area with remarkable speed. They set up living quarters, a training zone, a workshop, and a command center using their own equipment supplemented by repurposed Coalition materials. Coalition officers observing the process were bemused by the humans' insistence on physical exercise in the ship's standard 0.7 g gravity. "Your bodies will atrophy without resistance training," Dr. Patel explained to a curious Coalition medical officer. "Humans maintain strength through consistent physical stress." "Deliberate physiological stress as maintenance?" The medical officer's tentacles writhed in confusion. "Most species would consider that damaging," Dr. Patel smiled. "Most species didn't evolve on Earth." 3 days into the journey, the alarm klaxons blared. The Void Scourge had arrived at Torali, ahead of schedule. The massive Coalition warship shuddered as it dropped out of faster-than-light travel directly into battle. "Captain Reyes to the bridge," came Admiral Zelax's telepathic summons. Elena arrived to chaos. The view screens showed Coalition energy weapons firing at the twisted biomechanical ships of the Scourge. The first salvos tore through several Scourge vessels, but within minutes, the energy beams were being absorbed harmlessly. "Their adaptation rate is accelerating," Science Director Vexar reported, her tentacles flying over control surfaces. "Our weapons will be completely ineffective within 7 minutes." Elena studied the battle display. "Admiral, request permission to deploy a human strike team." Admiral Zelax's crystalline form flickered with surprise. "Against the Scourge? With what weapons?" "Our own," Elena replied simply. "Major Chen has prepared conventional munitions and boarding strategies." The Admiral hesitated only briefly before nodding. "Approved. Though I fail to see how projectile weapons could succeed where quantum disruptors have failed." 20 minutes later, 3 human shuttles launched from the Luminous Dawn, each carrying 4 combat specialists in sealed armor. Coalition officers watched in disbelief as the primitive craft maneuvered between energy beams toward a massive Scourge vessel. "Are they ramming the Scourge ship?" gasped Trell as the shuttles crashed through the biomechanical hull. Inside the Scourge vessel, Major Chen led his team through pulsing organic corridors. The interior was a nightmare fusion of flesh and machine, with circuits embedded in tissue and pulsing fluids flowing through mechanical channels. "Remember," Chen said, "over the team comm, conventional weapons only, nothing energy-based." The Scourge had evolved to counter every energy weapon in the Coalition arsenal. They hadn't faced bullets, explosives, and combat knives in millennia, if ever. The human team moved with practiced precision, setting explosive charges at what appeared to be vital junctions and firing armor-piercing rounds at moving components. Back on the luminous dawn, the Coalition officers watched in stunned silence as internal explosions rippled through the Scourge vessel. Within 20 minutes, all 3 human teams reported mission success and were returning with samples. "Impossible," whispered Science. Director Vexar as the damaged Scourge ship began to drift. "They disabled it with primitive kinetic weapons?" Elena allowed herself a small smile. The Scourge adapts quickly to energy patterns and technological signatures. Physical damage at the molecular level takes time to evolve defenses against. They can't simply program their way around a piece of metal destroying their cells. Admiral Zilax's crystalline form brightened considerably. "Captain Reyes, it seems we have underestimated the utility of your Deathworld perspective." "This is just the beginning, Admiral," Elena replied, watching as her team's shuttles returned, safely to the hangar bay. "Humans have been fighting against overwhelming odds since we crawled out of the primordial ooze. We've developed a certain knack for finding weaknesses in supposedly superior opponents." As the luminous dawn moved away, from the disabled Scourge vessel, word of the human success spread throughout the Coalition fleet. The Deathworlders had done what advanced technology could not, and they were just getting started. The turning point word of the human victory spread through Coalition space like wildfire. The species previously dismissed as primitive Deathworlders had succeeded where advanced civilizations had failed. Within days, the Coalition High Command requested expanded human deployment across their defensive lines. On the research vessel Stellar Inquiry, Dr. Aisha Patel supervised as Coalition scientists examined the Scourge samples retrieved by the boarding teams. The alien researchers worked in sealed environmental suits, uncomfortable in the human-tolerable laboratory conditions Captain Reyes had insisted upon. "Fascinating," murmured Chief Researcher Nelvik, a spindly arachnoid whose 8 appendages manipulated sophisticated scanning equipment. "The Scourge cellular structure reconfigures at the quantum level when exposed to energy weapons, but shows conventional biological responses to physical trauma." Dr. Patel nodded, examining tissue samples under a microscope. "They've evolved to counter technology, not biology. Their adaptive responses prioritize energy patterns over kinetic damage." "A critical vulnerability," agreed Nelvik. "But the Scourge learns quickly. They will adapt to physical weapons eventually." "Then we'll need to keep changing our approach," Dr. Patel replied. "Humans have fought asymmetric wars throughout our history. We're quite good at being unpredictable." A junior researcher approached, waving multiple limbs in excitement. "Dr. Patel, we've analyzed the human combat footage. Your species operated in what our instruments registered as toxic atmospheric conditions inside the Scourge vessel." Dr. Patel smiled. "Those conditions were well within human tolerance ranges. Earth's natural environment contains numerous toxins and pathogens that we've evolved to withstand." The research team fell silent, contemplating the implications. The creatures they'd dismissed as primitive had casually operated in conditions that would have killed most Coalition species within minutes. "Your immune systems are most impressive," Nelvik finally said, a new respect in his voice. "Necessity breeds adaptation," Dr. Patel replied. "Earth taught us that lesson long before we reached the stars." In another section of the Stellar Inquiry, Engineer Sofia Rodriguez worked alongside Coalition technicians, developing new weapons against the Scourge. The aliens had provided her with advanced fabrication equipment but were bewildered by her requests. You want to manufacture sharpened metal blades? Asked Chief Engineer Kraz, his scales shifting to a confused blue hue. Combat knives, yes, Sophia confirmed, showing him her designs. Combined with these chemical compounds. Projectile weapons have already proven effective, Kraz noted. Why revert to even more primitive technology? Sophia grinned. Because the Scourge will adapt to bullets eventually. We need a rotating arsenal of different attack vectors. Some high-tech, some decidedly low-tech. Under her guidance, the fabrication units produced an arsenal that would have seemed more at home in Earth's medieval period than on a starship. Swords, axes, spears, and maces, all made with advanced materials and carefully designed chemical coatings based on Dr. Patel's research. Coalition weapons specialists watched in growing amazement as Major Chen's soldiers demonstrated these weapons in training simulations. The humans moved with frightening speed and coordination in the ship's gravity, their bodies capable of generating devastating force with the simplest tools. Your species fights intimately, observed Weapons Master Vorn, a gelatinous being who operated mechanical appendages from within a hovering life support unit. Major Chen shrugged, wiping sweat from his brow. Another biological function that fascinated the aliens. Sometimes the old ways are best. The Scourge expects energy beams and quantum disruption. They won't expect a human with a chemically enhanced sword. Captain Elena Reyes stood on the bridge of the Coalition command ship. Inevitable Justice, now serving as tactical advisor to Fleet Commander Drezix. The Coalition fleet had assembled at Farpoint Station, the last major defensive position before the Scourge would reach densely populated core systems. The Scourge fleet will arrive within 6 hours, reported Drezix, a massive aquatic being, suspended in a water-filled command pod. They've assimilated our quantum torpedo technology from the Meridian engagement. Our simulations predict 82% fleet loss if we engage conventionally. Elena studied the tactical display, watching the approaching Scourge signatures. Commander, I have a proposal that may sound unconventional. Captain Reyes, at this point, unconventional is precisely what we need, Drezix replied, bubbles of amusement rising through his command pod. Elena outlined her plan. Instead of the standard Coalition battle formation, a mathematically perfect defensive grid, she proposed what humans called guerrilla tactics. Small, agile ships would conduct hit-and-run attacks while larger vessels remained hidden in the system's asteroid belt. This approach lacks elegance, commented the Coalition tactical officer. Exactly, Elena nodded. The Scourge anticipates patterns. They expect logical, efficient battle formations. What they don't expect is chaos, unpredictability, human warfare. Commander Drezix considered briefly before issuing orders. Implement Captain Reyes's strategy and deploy the human strike teams to these coordinates. Throughout the fleet, human specialists joined Coalition crews, bringing with them not just their primitive weapons, but their Deathworld perspective. Coalition officers initially viewed them with skepticism, but after witnessing their performance against the Scourge, most welcomed the human advisors. When the Scourge fleet arrived, they encountered not the expected defensive grid, but an apparently disorganized collection of small attack craft. The Scourge advance faltered, as their predictive algorithms failed to identify any recognizable pattern. Now, Elena commanded, and the hidden heavy cruisers emerged from the asteroid belt, attacking from multiple vectors. The battle raged for hours. Each time the Scourge adapted to one human tactic, the Coalition forces would switch to another. When energy weapons became ineffective, they switched to kinetic. When the Scourge developed hardened outer shells, the human teams deployed their chemical weapons and primitive bladed instruments during boarding actions. On the Scourge command vessel, Major Chen led a mixed human Coalition strike team through pulsing corridors. The Coalition soldiers, used to fighting at range with energy weapons, watched in astonishment as the humans engaged in close combat with the Scourge entities. Their adaptation rate slows significantly when facing multiple attack vectors simultaneously, Chen explained, driving a chemically enhanced blade into a Scourge control node. They can't evolve defenses against everything at once. The strike team reached the central control chamber and planted demolition charges designed by engineer Rodriguez, simple but devastating devices combining coalition energy technology with human chemical explosives in ways the Scourge had never encountered. Back on the inevitable Justice, Elena watched as the Scourge command ship erupted in a series of explosions. The remaining Scourge vessels, suddenly uncoordinated, fell into disarray. "Press the advantage!" Commander Drezix ordered, his massive form undulating with excitement within his command pod. The Coalition fleet surged forward, applying the human, tactical doctrine of pursuit and destruction of a rooted enemy, a concept alien to the Coalition's usual practice of allowing defeated foes to retreat. When the battle ended, the Coalition had achieved its first major victory against the Scourge. 70% of the Scourge fleet had been destroyed, with the remainder retreating in disarray. In the aftermath, the Coalition High Command convened an emergency session. Elena and her team were invited, not as observers, but as honored participants. "The Deathworlders have proven their worth," announced Grand Counselor Vrex. "We propose the immediate integration of human tactical advisors throughout Coalition forces." Elena stepped forward. "The people of Earth are honored by your trust, Counselor. But we offer more than just combat tactics. We propose a joint research initiative to study the Scourge and develop new countermeasures." Science Director Vexar's tentacles rippled with interest. "What specific areas do you suggest, Captain?" "First," Elena replied, "biological countermeasures. Dr. Patel has identified similarities between the Scourge's adaptive mechanisms and certain Earth pathogens. Second, technological disruption. Engineer Rodriguez has designed hybrid weapons combining your advanced energy systems with our primitive approaches." The council chamber buzzed with discussion. The species that had once looked down on humans as primitive Deathworlders were now hanging on their every word. "There's something else," Elena continued. "The Scourge communication patterns we've intercepted suggest they're not just adapting, they're learning. They fear us because we're unpredictable. Let's use that." Grand Counselor Vrex's mechanical shell hummed with approval. "Elaborate, Captain." "Psychological warfare," Elena explained. "The Scourge operates on logic and pattern recognition. Humans specialize in defying both. We propose deploying human cultural elements alongside military operations, music, art, literature, games, things that make no logical sense but are quintessentially human." Several council members shifted uncomfortably at such an unorthodox suggestion, but Admiral Zilax's crystalline form brightened with understanding. "Brilliant," he transmitted. "The Scourge cannot adapt to what it cannot comprehend." As the council session concluded, Elena found herself surrounded by Coalition officials eager to learn more about human methods. The Coalition's most advanced scientific minds now listened attentively to Dr. Patel's explanations of Earth biology. Military strategists studied Major Chen's historical accounts of human warfare with newfound respect. "Captain," Admiral Zilax approached as the session ended, "the Coalition has existed for 12,000 years. In all that time, we have never encountered a species quite like yours." Elena smiled. "Is that a compliment, Admiral?" "The highest," he replied, his crystalline structure pulsing with sincerity. "We dismissed Earth as a harsh, primitive world that somehow produced sentient life. Now we understand. Earth didn't just produce life, it forged it into something extraordinary." As Elena and her team prepared for the next phase of operations, reports arrived from across Coalition space. Human advisors were revolutionizing Scourge defense strategies. Coalition species were studying human biology, psychology, and history with unprecedented interest. Some were even attempting to adapt their environmental suits to better tolerate Deathworld conditions as a training exercise. The tide was turning. The Coalition had gained something more valuable than new weapons or tactics. They had gained the Deathworld perspective, and the Scourge, for the first time since its emergence, was retreating. Deathworlders triumphant. 6 months after humanity's introduction to the Galactic Coalition, the war against the Void Scourge had transformed dramatically. What began as desperate last stands had evolved into coordinated offensives. Coalition forces, once on the brink of extinction, now pushed steadily into Scourge-occupied territory. Captain Elena Reyes stood before the holographic war table aboard the Coalition flagship Indomitable Purpose. Once a simple tactical advisor, she now served as Joint Strike Commander for the Coalition's most elite fighting force, a mixed unit of humans and selected Coalition species who had adapted to Deathworlder training protocols. The Scourge has consolidated its remaining forces at Nexus Point, Elena explained to the assembled commanders. The hologram displayed a massive structure at the intersection of 3 major spatial rifts. Intelligence suggests this is their central hive, possibly their point of origin in our galaxy. War strategist Kraz, once dismissive of humans, now listened attentively. His scales had permanently shifted to a respectful purple hue when addressing Elena. Our simulations indicate conventional assault would be futile. The Scourge has developed countermeasures to most of our tactical innovations. Then we'll need to be even more innovative, Elena replied with a smile that no longer caused the aliens to flinch. Dr. Patel, what's the status of Project Achilles? Dr. Aisha Patel stepped forward, looking exhausted but triumphant. For months, she had led a joint research team studying Scourge biology, working in conditions that would have killed most Coalition scientists without their specially designed environmental suits. We've identified the core vulnerability, she reported, bringing up detailed cellular scans on the holographic display. The Scourge adaptive mechanism requires tremendous energy expenditure. Each time they evolve a new defense, they must divert resources from other systems. A biological version of what humans call opportunity cost, noted Science Director Vexar, her tentacles moving in the gesture Coalition species had adopted from humans. A thumbs up. Exactly, Dr. Patel confirmed. We've developed a compound that forces accelerated adaptation cycles. It tricks the Scourge into continuously evolving defenses against non-existent threats, depleting their energy reserves. Major Chen, now commanding the Coalition Special Tactics Group, nodded appreciatively. Elegant. Instead of trying to outmatch their adaptations, we make their greatest strength into a weakness. Engineer Rodriguez stepped up next. We've developed delivery systems using Coalition phase technology combined with basic human chemical propulsion. She displayed schematics for missiles that would bypass Scourge defenses using seemingly contradictory technologies working in tandem. Primitive and advanced simultaneously, mused Admiral Zilax, his crystalline form pulsing with approval. The Scourge cannot adapt to both at once. Elena studied the plans carefully before addressing the assembled commanders. The attack will proceed in 3 phases. First, our diversionary fleet will engage the outer Scourge defenses using constantly rotating weapon signatures. 5 minutes on each configuration before switching to the next. The hologram displayed Coalition ships employing the tactical doctrine humans had taught them. Unpredictable movement patterns, deliberate communication errors, and seemingly illogical battle formations. Phase 2, Elena continued. Special. Tactics Group will infiltrate the central hive structure via these access points. She highlighted 3 locations. Major Chen's teams will deploy Dr. Patel's compound directly into the Scourge's biological network. And Phase 3? Asked Commander Drezix, bubbles of anticipation rising through his command pod. Elena's expression grew serious. I will personally lead a strike team to the central control node. Intelligence suggests the Scourge operates on a hive mind structure with distributed but hierarchical processing. We believe there's a central coordinator, something akin to a queen. A hush fell over the command center. Even after months of working alongside humans, the Coalition species still found themselves surprised by human boldness. That's suicide, whispered Trell, her translucent skin flickering with concerned patterns. The central node will be the most heavily defended position. Elena nodded. High risk, high reward. The Scourge won't expect a direct assault on their command center. It's too illogical, too human. Admiral Zilax's crystalline structure brightened with what Elena had come to recognize as admiration. The Coalition approves this strategy, Commander Reyes, though we request one modification. Sir? You will not go alone, Zilax stated firmly. I will accompany your strike team. Murmurs rippled through the command center. An admiral personally joining a high-risk assault was unprecedented in Coalition history. Elena studied the crystalline being who had become not just an ally, but a friend. With respect, Admiral, your species isn't adapted to combat conditions. Perhaps not naturally, Zilax replied, his form shifting to reveal modifications. Crystalline structures reinforced with metals, internal compartments containing what appeared to be human-designed weapons. But we can learn. The Battle of Nexus. Point began 18 hours later. The Coalition fleet emerged from faster-than-light travel in a scattered formation that appeared chaotic but was meticulously planned. The Scourge response was immediate. Massive biomechanical structures unfurled, revealing weapons arrays evolved from captured Coalition technology. On the bridge of the Indomitable Purpose, Elena watched the initial engagement with focused intensity. All ships, implement Rotation Protocol Alpha, Weapons Configuration 1, Mark. The Coalition vessels opened fire with basic energy weapons, deliberately simplified designs that the Scourge quickly adapted to. 5 minutes later, they switched. To kinetic weaponry, then to chemical explosives, then to focused radiation beams. Each time the Scourge evolved defenses against one approach, the Coalition forces switched to another. Special Tactics Group deploy, Elena ordered as the diversionary battle reached peak intensity. Major Chen led 12 assault craft toward the massive Scourge structure, each vessel employing a different stealth technology. Some used advanced cloaking fields, others simple visual camouflage, and still others brazenly approached without concealment, their very obviousness confusing the Scourge detection systems. Inside the lead assault craft, Chen briefed his mixed human-alien team. Remember your training. Unpredictable movement patterns. Rotate weapons every 3 minutes, and most importantly, think like a Deathworlder, completed his Coalition second-in-command, a reptilian saurid who had undergone intensive human combat training. The saurid bared its teeth in a deliberately human smile that would have terrified its own species. The infiltration teams breached the outer shell of the Nexus Point structure, immediately encountering Scourge defense entities, twisted, combinations of organic and mechanical components. As expected, the defenders initially countered the Coalition's advanced weapons, but struggled against the constantly changing attack methodologies. Team Alpha, position reached, Chen reported as his squad secured the first biological network, junction. Dr. Patel's compound, contained in deceptively simple-looking metal canisters, was injected directly into the pulsating tissue of the Scourge infrastructure. Across the massive structure, the other teams reported similar success. The compound began its work immediately, forcing the Scourge biological network into a frenzy of unnecessary adaptations. Energy that should have been directed to defense was instead wasted on countering phantom threats. "Strike team, you're clear to proceed," Chen informed Elena as his teams withdrew to secure extraction points. Elena nodded to her own team. A dozen elite operatives, including 4 humans, 3 Saurids, 2 arachnoid Zendi, and 3 crystalline beings, including Admiral Xylax. Remember, we move fast and we don't stop. The Scourge will be in biological distress, but still deadly. They launched from the Indomitable Purpose in a vessel of Engineer Rodriguez's design, part ancient human submarine technology, part advanced coalition phase shifting. The hybrid approach confused Scourge sensors just long enough for them to reach the central spire of the massive structure. The interior of the Nexus Point central node defied description. Organic tissue merged seamlessly with technology, pulsing. Corridors shifted and reconfigured as they watched, and the boundaries between living and mechanical became meaningless. "Stay together," Elena ordered as the team advanced. "The compound is working, look." Throughout the structure, Scourge tissues were visibly transforming, growing protective layers against non-existent threats, diverting energy to counterattacks that weren't happening. The Scourge's greatest strength, adaptive evolution, had become a self-destructive spiral. Despite their weakened state, Scourge defenders converged on the strike team in waves. Elena found herself fighting alongside Admiral Xylax, her conventional combat knife complementing his crystalline energy projections. The Admiral moved with surprising agility, having studied human combat techniques for months. "I understand now," Xylax transmitted as they fought back-to-back against a particularly massive Scourge entity. "Your species doesn't just survive adversity. You thrive on it." Elena drove her blade into a vulnerable junction of the creature's biomechanical structure. "Necessity is the mother of invention, Admiral. Earth taught us that nothing comes easy." The team fought their way deeper into the structure, following energy readings toward what they believed was the central coordination node. With each level, they descended. The resistance grew fiercer, the Scourge entities more desperate. 2 team members fell, a saurid and a human, before they reached their destination. The central chamber was a vast, spherical space filled with swirling biomechanical structures all connected to a pulsating core suspended in the center. "The Scourge Queen," whispered one of the Zendi, multiple eyes widening at the sight. The entity at the center bore little resemblance to the Scourge defenders they had faced. It appeared almost elegant, a complex geometric arrangement of organic crystals and flowing metallic components, forming something like a massive brain. Tendrils extended outward, connecting to the chamber walls and beyond. As the strike team entered, the Queen became aware of their presence. The entire chamber shuddered, and a voice, not sound but direct neural impulses, filled their minds. "Curious, you bring chaos to order." Elena stepped forward. "We bring an end to your invasion." Invasion? No. Evolution. All becomes one. Resistance is inefficient. "Life isn't about efficiency," Elena replied, signaling her team to begin planting Engineer Rodriguez's specialized charges around the chamber. "It's about diversity, adaptation on your own terms, not forced assimilation." The Queen's crystalline components shifted, focusing on Elena with something like curiosity. "Your species defies patterns, unpredictable, fascinating. Join us willingly. Become perfect." Admiral Xylax moved to Elena's side. "We define our own perfection." The Queen seemed to consider this for a moment before the chamber suddenly filled with defensive entities emerging from the walls themselves. The strike team engaged immediately, their diverse weapons and tactics momentarily confusing the Scourge defenders. "Charge is set!" called one of the humans as he finished placing the final explosive. Elena nodded to Admiral Xylax. "Time to leave!" The team fought their way back toward the extraction point, the entire structure now trembling around them. The Scourge Queen, sensing their intentions, directed all available resources toward stopping them. Corridors sealed shut, forcing the team to blast new pathways. Gravity shifted unpredictably as the Scourge attempted to disorient them. As they reached the extraction vessel, Elena realized Admiral Zilax was no longer with them. Turning back, she saw the crystalline being engaged with multiple Scourge entities, buying time for the team's escape. Without hesitation, Elena charged back into the fray, her combat knife flashing as she carved a path toward the Admiral. "Get the others. To safety!" she shouted to her second-in-command. "Detonate on schedule whether we're back or not." "Captain, that's suicide!" called one of the Coalition officers. Elena didn't slow down. "No, it's human," she replied, driving her blade into a Scourge defender. She reached Admiral Zilax just as his crystalline form took a severe impact, fracturing one of his core structures. Elena positioned herself between him and the advancing Scourge, her movements a blur of practiced lethality. "You should have left, Captain," Zilax transmitted weakly. Elena pulled him toward a side corridor as she fought. "Deathworlders don't leave people behind, Admiral. Coalition doctrine may consider one life expendable for the greater good, but humans have another doctrine. No one gets left behind." Together, they navigated a circuitous route back toward the extraction point, Elena supporting the injured Admiral while fending off pursuit. The entire structure continued to shudder around them as Dr. Patel's compound worked its way deeper into the Scourge biological network, forcing catastrophic adaptation cycles. They reached the extraction vessel with seconds to spare, the rest of the team providing covering fire from the hatch. As they lifted off, the first explosions began to ripple through the central node. "All teams clear," Major Chen reported over the comm. "Compound deployment 100% successful. The Scourge biological network is tearing itself apart." From the relative safety of the Coalition fleet, they watched as the massive Nexus Point structure began to collapse. The explosives were almost unnecessary. The Scourge Queen's desperate attempts to counter Dr. Patel's compound had sent the entire collective into an adaptive death spiral. Incomprehensible came one final neural broadcast from the dying Queen. "Your chaos defeats our order." "Not chaos," Elena whispered, though the Queen couldn't hear her. "Humanity." 3 months later, Elena stood in the Great Hall of the Galactic Coalition alongside her team. The massive chamber, once filled with separate environmental bubbles keeping species apart, now featured many Coalition representatives choosing to use modified environmental suits so they could interact more directly, a practice they'd learned from humans. Grand Counselor Vrex's mechanical shell gleamed in the chamber's light as he addressed the assembly. For 12,000 years, the Coalition has classified worlds according to their technological development and environmental parameters. Today, we recognize that our system was fundamentally flawed. A murmur rippled through the assembled representatives. "We dismissed Earth as a death world, and its inhabitants as primitive," Vrex continued. "In doing so, we failed to recognize that adversity breeds strength, that challenges foster innovation, and that technology alone does not define advancement." Admiral Zilax, his crystalline form now fully repaired and bearing new modifications inspired by human designs, moved to Elena's side. "The Coalition has learned more in 6 months of partnership with humanity than in centuries of peaceful existence." Elena surveyed the chamber. Throughout the hall, evidence of human influence was visible. Coalition soldiers now trained in Earth-like gravity conditions. Scientists studied human biology to understand how primitive natural immune systems could outperform their advanced medical technology against novel threats. Engineers were redesigning Coalition technology with human principles of redundancy and simplicity. "The formal induction of Earth into the Galactic Coalition will proceed," announced Vrex. "Not as a probationary member, but with full standing. Furthermore, the Coalition classification system will be revised to recognize the unique strengths of species from challenging environments." As applause filled the chamber, Science Director Vexar approached with a data tablet. "Captain Reyes, our analysis of the Scourge remains is complete. We believe they originated from a galaxy neighboring our own, a place where order and pattern reign supreme. They never encountered anything like humans before, Elena mused. Precisely. Vexar's tentacles formed the human gesture for agreement. They evolved in an environment of perfect order, developing the ability to adapt to any logical pattern. But they had no defense against unpredictability, against the human factor, finished Major Chen, joining them. Engineer Rodriguez smiled. Sometimes the most sophisticated solution is the simplest one. Dr. Patel studied the biological data on Vexar's tablet. Fascinating. Their adaptation mechanism was so specialized that encountering genuine diversity was catastrophic for them. The celebration continued long into the night. Coalition species that once would have avoided physical proximity now mingled, sharing stories and learning from each other. Human music, once considered chaotic noise by Coalition standards, played throughout the chamber, its unpredictable rhythms now appreciated as beautiful complexity. Elena found herself on a balcony overlooking the celebration, joined by Admiral Zilax. The Coalition has established a new classification, Zilax transmitted. Class D species, those who evolved on Deathworlds. The designation is now considered a mark of distinction rather than primitiveness. Elena smiled. Times change. Indeed, Zilax agreed. Joint Coalition Earth expeditions are already being planned to explore beyond our galaxy's edge. Your perspective will be invaluable. And what about the Coalition worlds? Elena asked. I understand many species are attempting to adapt to more challenging environments. Zilax's crystalline form brightened with amusement. Yes, there are now waiting lists for environmental training programs. Many Coalition species have discovered that controlled exposure to Deathworld conditions strengthens them in unexpected ways. Below them, a group of Coalition youths were being taught human games by off-duty soldiers. The concept of physical, sports, activities with no practical purpose beyond challenge and enjoyment, had fascinated Coalition species. Our civilizations evolved along different paths, Zilax observed. The Coalition sought to overcome environmental challenges through technology, creating perfect conditions for comfortable existence. Humanity embraced the challenges, adapting yourselves rather than your environment. Both approaches have merit, Elena replied. That's the lesson here. Not that one way is right and one wrong, but that together we're stronger than either could be alone. As the celebration continued, news arrived from Coalition outposts across the galaxy. The remaining Scourge forces, cut off from their queen, had either been neutralized or had gone dormant. For the first time in a year, the galaxy was at peace, but it was a different kind of peace than before. The Coalition had been forever changed by its encounter with both the Scourge and humanity. Species that had grown complacent in technological perfection now sought challenge. Civilizations that had avoided physical risk for millennia now established. Training programs inspired by human military procedures. And at the center of it all were the Deathworlders, the humans who had arrived in the galaxy at precisely the right moment, bringing with them not superior technology, but something far more valuable, the strength that comes only from evolving, on a world that tried to kill you every day. As Elena looked out at the stars visible through the Great Hall's crystalline dome, she thought about Earth, the harsh, beautiful planet that had forged humanity through countless challenges. The planet that the Coalition had once pitied them for evolving on was now recognized as the source of humanity's greatest strength. What comes next? Asked Zilax, following her gaze toward the stars. Elena smiled. That's the best part about being human, Admiral. We never really know. We just face it together. Above them, the galaxy spun on, filled with civilizations forever changed by their encounter with the Deathworlders from Earth, the species that had turned their greatest challenge into their greatest strength.